Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Thank you for hanging out with Electric Violin Shop. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July. The folks that are celebrating that in the US, the folks around the world are like, it's July 4th. Yeah, that's great. It's American Independence Day. We get really excited about that and we go blow stuff up. So if you're a musician, hope you still got all your fingers and hope you had a lot of hot dogs or whatever it is that you do on the 4th of July where you are. Um, I'm really excited this week. We've got a special guest with us who I have known for a while through the violin business. We are going to be talking with Sam Walder, who is the CEO of Trala. And if you guys don't know what Trala is, you should know what Trala is. If you are a violinist, the best way to learn to play the violin is with a teacher. Self-taught is kind of, there's certain things you can teach yourself how to do, playing the violin, skydiving. There's a couple things that maybe it's not the best idea to teach yourself. And then there are people around the world and there's people with life situations and all that maybe having a personal in-person teacher is going to be a fairly significant barrier for you. Well, Trala is there saying, hey, we've got an alternative. You don't necessarily have to go to a human teacher and stand in a room with them. There are human teachers around the world, and through the miracle of technology, we can connect you guys, and you can learn to play the violin if you're living on a desert island. And I don't know who you can play for. You can play for yourself. But that's what Sam's got the company Trala. He is an expert in violin and AI and running a successful company. So just want to say hi to Sam. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. I would love to have you tell folks a little more accurate and detailed what Trala is from what I just said.
Sure, yeah. So our mission is to make world-class music education accessible to everyone on Earth. So you mentioned the desert island. We do have students in 193 countries, and that includes students that live on islands, students in rural areas, anywhere that you find people, you have people that want to play the violin. But unfortunately, there's huge barriers to entry, right? It's very difficult to find a teacher that necessarily matches for you with the types of music you want to play, your budget, your ability, even your age. And so Trala, our goal is to make sure that everybody can learn a musical instrument. So what we have is we have an online platform. We've got about 40 teachers right now. By the end of that year, that'll probably be closer to 100 teachers.
Wow.
And we match students individually with teachers one on one so that you can, let's say you really want to learn Irish fiddle music,
Hmm.
right? And you are an adult learner and you're available on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. and that's the only time you can take lessons. We have that person for you. So we match each student individually with each teacher, which is also great for teachers because oftentimes if you're a teacher, it's really hard to find students or it's hard to find students that really match with your style. So if you don't want to teach the 6-year-old whose mom is forcing her to learn Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, great. Like we're going to get you all these adult beginners that are learning Irish fiddle music, and so everything just works really nicely for both the teacher and the student. So we support all of this with a tech platform. So um, one of the things we're trying to do is lower the barrier to entry to be a great teacher. So for our teachers, we handle all the scheduling, we handle all the billing, and we've started building technology both for students to practice. We've got this app which has been downloaded about 600,000 times now, or at least by 600,000 different violinists around the world. And it helps you practice in between lessons. So it gives you feedback on your practice. It can tell you very sophisticated things, like saying, hey, your finger is here and it should be over there. And that's because your wrist is flat like this and it should be curved. And we can do all of that just by listening to the audio of the students playing. So students can make a lot more progress in between lessons. And then on the teacher side, we build all these tools. For example, we've got a tool called Trala TA that based on the lesson, if it's recorded, it will write lesson notes for you. It will summarize everything that you've talked about. It'll write homework, follow up on the action items, just like do everything that a teaching assistant would do for you. We've built that through some technology. So that's sort of the crux of our platform. And right now it's only for violin. We will be expanding to other instruments, but right now it's just violin.
That's incredible. My mom was a music teacher, and her instrument was pipe organ, and she sat in on all my lessons starting when I was 3 years old, and we still have like 10 linear feet of bookshelves of all of the notebooks that she kept notes during all my lessons, so that during the week I could go back and say, okay, here's what the teacher wants me to do, I've got it written down. Which I know that was like, I was miles past most kids having just my mom sitting there who's a musician taking notes. Having the technology do it for you is amazing.
Yeah, I remember those notebooks as well. That was a lot of my childhood playing violin. Um, and yeah, I mean, we should just make all of that easier. It's hard enough to learn an instrument as is, even if you don't have all the support from everybody around you.
No doubt. Yeah, we just had a TikTok go kind of semi-viral. It's hit, I don't know, 200 or 300,000 views, where we were talking about sort of some of the barriers to entry into classical music. Somebody had asked, I think I had mentioned that there was a certain violin that was around $2,700. So, nice, but not a high-end instrument by any means. And someone went, wait, $2,700 is not a high-end violin? So we had to have the discussion about what violins actually cost, and that the classical music world is, it's a little bit gatekeepy. It's not super accessible for a lot of people. Schools do a pretty good job of rentals, and you've got the ability to have an orchestra teacher in your school who can serve as a teacher, not really an individual teacher, but a group teacher. But a lot of people have gotten into classical music through the school programs, but apart from that, like, accessibility is not very high in classical music.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it comes down to the methods. So a lot of people are learning via like Suzuki method, for example, which was written specifically for children. And a lot of teachers, they were never trained how to teach adult beginners, especially because a lot of teachers, the way they're teaching is the way that they learn. And if you're a very good violinist, you probably learned as a child, right? So we just don't have good methods for teaching adults, but there's tons of adults. I'm sure a lot of your audience are
Mm-hmm.
adults, either beginner, intermediate, advanced, who want to learn. So yeah, in terms of barriers to entry, making sure that it's not just children is something that we can do, because you absolutely can learn as an adult. We've got 80-year-olds, multiple 80-year-olds. I think we have a 91-year-old woman who's learning on Trala. Like we also have kids learning, but I mean, anybody can learn.
Yeah, I think Brian, the truck driver, is a friend of mine on Twitter, who's I think one of your very kind of high profile students in the social media world.
Yeah, Brian is incredible. He's, I mean, just a testament to what dedication and passion does. So he's in his 50s, I believe, and he's just been practicing constantly. And he got to play in a local symphony orchestra
Yeah,
after practicing, I think, for like 3 or 4 years. It's extraordinary. But it just shows that it's like anybody can do this.
right. Yeah, he's an over the road trucker, if you guys don't know, and he could be in Montana one day and Arizona the next, and he's able to stay in touch with his teacher, and he's got his violin in his truck, and you got a lot of downtime when you're a trucker, so I guess maybe let's just learn how to play an instrument. So one of the cool things that we were talking about before we came to air, is that AI is a thing. I think if you've been on the internet in the last couple of years, you've got to know that AI is a thing. Everybody knows about Chat GPT, writing papers for kids and all that. And of course, there's AI composers, and there's AI. I use an AI drummer in Logic to help me do some tracking. I send out to a human drummer, but the AI drummer is super super helpful in my writing process. Um, and a lot of people are totally freaked out by the appearance of AI in the music business. And I think maybe we should not be as freaked out as we are excited to have a new tool, right?
Yeah, I think let's start with some definitions. I think there's totally reasons to be scared about artificial intelligence. I think most people maybe understand that they're using AI on an everyday basis. Like if you view electric violin shop content, that's probably because an AI algorithm decided that you should watch it. Um, AI governs so many things that we do. All of social media, obviously, is just one example. but it goes into the core of basically everything, the way we build products. So this has been around for years. The stuff that's happened more recently is super exciting because it's this great tool that is going to just be a huge productivity unlock for everybody. So not just musicians, not just students that are trying to cheat on their essays, doctors, lawyers, urban planners, CEOs, anybody is going to be able to use this. So one way that we've done, I think, a good job with AI so far as a company is we're building it alongside our teachers. So when we build anything that has to do with AI, we're making sure that teachers are involved in the product process, that they're doing quality assurance, that they're giving us feedback. And this is very constant. So we built this thing called Trala TA, I think I talked about earlier. That's an AI driven piece of technology where it takes a recording and it can basically do stuff that was taking teachers 3 hours a day, and it does it in seconds. So we had stories of teachers staying up till 2 a.m. writing lesson notes after a lesson, making sure that their students get wrap ups, making sure that they've got lesson plans so they're prepared for the next lesson. This stuff takes hours. If you want to be a really good teacher, you would have to put in this work. But this is a perfect example of using AI to just solve a banal problem, because all you're really doing is like summarizing what's happened in the lesson. That's not your core competency as a musician or as a teacher, right? Your core competency is being in the lesson, being a great teacher, listening to what somebody is playing, giving them encouragement, being personable. It's not writing wrap-ups. The same way for like doctors spend hours and hours just writing up notes, and it's like not a good usage of their time, right? So for Trala TA, it just does all that for you. And so teachers don't have to stay up till 2 a.m. anymore. And they get hours in a day back every single day. So I think this is an example of, if you decide that you're not going to be scared by this technology and you say, okay, let's find some really good use cases, then you can build something that's legitimately impactful to people's lives. And that's just one tiny, tiny example. We can talk about so many more examples of where AI is going to go. But I think, just at the beginning, there's a ton of things that probably take you a lot of time manually to do. Maybe editing videos. That's a great example, right? If you're spending 10 hours a week editing videos for social media, like AI can do that very well. And it's not something, maybe you enjoy it, but maybe it's not your core competency. Your core competency is acting in the videos and being the personality that you are. So you can just get a lot more time back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. What do you think about? I guess you've done some AI composition, right? You were, I guess that was part of how you met your partner for Trala, right?
Wow, yes, that's very bespoke knowledge. Yeah, so the very beginning of Trala. So we've been around for 7 years. It's actually a
All right.
T-shirt um,
Awesome.
commemorating 7 years. The way it started is by an attempt, a failed attempt to build an artificial intelligence composer that you can collaborate with live as a musician.
Mm.
So you would basically see the sheet music that was written by an AI, and then you'd play music along with it. And if you played something different from what was written, then it would understand that and it would change the rest of the sheet music based on the chord structure you were in, the notes you had played before. So you're sort of like live jamming with this AI, right? It sounds awesome, right? It
Yeah.
would be such a cool product.
Dig it.
um, and honestly, that's probably, somebody should go build that, I think. But that was the first time that I had sort of combined like my personal passions of playing the violin and building technology into something together. But we realized at the time that was totally not doable. It was, I don't want to say ahead of its time, but the technology would be very difficult. Now today, I think that's a good product. So if somebody wants to take that idea and run with it, they should do that.
Yeah. Um, and then from a, I guess like a scoring standpoint, sometimes if I'm composing, I've got a line here that I've written this for violin, and now I need to orchestrate this thing. It kind of feels like an AI could help maybe get me started in that process, right?
That is such a good usage. Of AI. Yeah. So what it's really good at is taking something that you've created with your artistry and your sort of emotion and passion, and then sort of like extending that. So it's not good at coming up with anything from scratch. If you just ask the machine to like make a great song, not going to do it. Right. And I think all musicians should sort of like breathe a sigh of relief, because you're not just going to press a button as a layperson, a non-musician, and be able to create incredible music. um, you will be able to have a lot more tools, just the same way that we have Ableton and we have Logic and we've got, all these tools that we didn't have 15, 20 years ago. So that level of an unlock of being able to get people more creative, that's going to go like to the 10th power. It's way, way more. But yeah, if you want to write something and then have it score it, or orchestrate it, that's perfect, right? You write a little melody and then it can just create everything else based on that. But you'll have to tune it. You'll fine tune it, but it'll take you like hours instead of weeks,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, I
And so you can
almost.
have so much more creative control in the end. It
Mhm.
is way more creativity, way more creative control. um, and also if there's some just like tasks, like you want to play something and then get it automatically transcribed, that's another great AI task. That normally the transcription itself can be a huge pain, but that can be completely automated.
Yeah, I love that. And it feels like you would almost be working with like a digital collaborator, like you were saying from the composition, your original composition idea.
Oh yeah, I don't know, have you used ChatGPT to sort of help you write emails or marketing copy or anything like
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yeah, we posted a Facebook post a few weeks ago that I asked ChatGPT, hey, write me 2 paragraphs about what Electric Violin Shop is. And it was one of the best summaries I've seen about what we do. I was like, I don't know whether to be really happy or really sad that it's it's a better writer than me on that. Um, but yeah, it
Well,
was fantastic.
yeah. And since it knows so much, I mean, there's so many things that you can do. If maybe people are messaging you after hours, like between, I don't know, you're probably not doing customer support between midnight and 7 a.m. or something like that. Um, Being able to speak in your voice and help people out and give them sort of like that high touch feeling, I mean, that's perfect,
Right.
right? There's no reason to necessarily be scared of that. Um, Definitely, there's security concerns about people spoofing other people's voices and stuff like that. Like, we're going to live that for sure. So I have to tell every new employee, like, within the first 2 weeks of joining Trala, you are going to get a text or a call from somebody claiming to be me. And there's I don't know if you've checked out 11 Labs.
Mm-mm.
um, it's a really cool platform where you can put in basically your voice. I'm sure you've got tons of voice content of yourself. You can put it in there, and then it'll create an artificial voice that you can then put any text in, and it'll speak it out, and it'll sound pretty much like you.
Hmm.
And so that's very scary for security reasons, because maybe your grandma gets a call from somebody that sounds like it's you, so you need to develop some security measures. But also think about it from an art perspective. Imagine, for example, a movie where you can speak directly to a character and they can actually speak back. Like,
Mm.
this has never existed before. You could always break the fourth wall,
Right.
where the character interacts with the audience, sort of, but the audience can never interact back. But for the very first time, you can actually do that. So they've got this technology that just turns text into speech, and it sounds exactly like you, or it sounds exactly like me. I was playing around with this. And so you can live generate sort of new video content, and they'll be able to do it with your face as well. If you saw the Apple AR VR goggles they release,
Mm.
they literally scan your face and they make an avatar of you. And so imagine again, like, making a music video, for example. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it'll look like you and it'll sound like you, and you can play around with all this stuff. And it's kind of weird, but like, again, we're here. This has
Right.
happened. The ship is so far sailing, and it's only the beginning. I think people also say, "Oh, this is so scary. ChatGPT is going to help write essays for people." But they don't understand. This is what already
Okay.
exists. This is what existed 6 months ago,
Right.
right? The stuff that we're working on now is going way, way beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, Chat GPT is going to help people write essays. Yeah, okay. It's going to help me write music. I'm not upset about that.
Yeah, you have to sort of start fundamentally thinking, okay, what exactly do we want out of our education, right? Is writing the essay the ultimate thing that we need people to do? Or actually, does it give us more opportunity for creativity?
Right. It's the same thing when I was a kid. They tell you, you're not going to have a calculator with you everywhere you go. Well, they were wrong.
We're wrong. Yeah, they were wrong about a lot of stuff.
So, yeah, I guess maybe that kind of brings up, and we didn't talk about going in this direction, but a lot of people ask me, okay, well, what if you had auto tune on a singer's voice? That's a thing that's been happening for a long time. There's no reason that you couldn't run your electric violin through auto tune, and we just eliminate any of your intonation problems, right? Or we can run reverb on something that really kind of helps you sound like you're generating a better tone than you are. We can use compression to maybe smooth out your right hand. At what point are we cheating, right? Or is cheating, what does that even mean, right?
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think for me, I think using the tools at your disposal is using the tools at your disposal. My personal opinion, and I haven't really pushed on this too terribly hard, is that the only thing that's actually cheating is passing off somebody else's work as your own. If I take an Itzhak Perlman recording and I pantomime to that, and I want you to think that what you're hearing is me and not him, that's cheating. Um, but very famously, Itzhak Perlman and Yo-Yo Ma played at Obama's inauguration, but it was like 20 degrees outside. Those guys aren't playing in that weather. They're certainly not dragging their instruments out there. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but if you watched that performance at the inauguration, that was pre-recorded in Panama. You were not hearing them in that moment. They recorded it the day before. It's still them. It's still their instruments, but it wasn't them in that situation. And I don't think anybody can accuse either of those two guys of being sellouts or cheats or anything like that. So now I think using the tools at your disposal is totally legit as long as you're not trying to pass off somebody else's work as your own.
I completely agree. I think that's a really good test. And I think, artists are going to figure out ways to use this technology and they're going to be so creative in ways that just blow our minds. To your point, you talked about auto tuning the violin, for example. I mean, anybody can do that if they're recording it. So any recorded piece of music, you're probably going to be doing some effects on it, some post production, some mastering that just makes sure that everything sounds very good, right? Everybody takes that for granted. Doing it live, that's just the next step, right? But that's fundamentally the exact same thing. I think where generative AI is going to sort of take us is um, in that live performance, you can just do so much more. You could play a single instrument and it sounds like a full orchestra, right? You could not even play a single instrument. You could be typing and just saying sort of what you want the audience to be feeling. And if you give a good enough prompt, it'll just create live music just like that. And maybe not only does it create live music, but it creates like a music video behind it. So you could be live creating entire movies with plots and characters and doing that as fast as you can type or as fast as you can speak. Um, and that's something that's really cool as well. So, and none of this is necessarily cheating, right? I think, whereas you said plagiarism, like plagiarism is for sure cheating. That's the that's a, you know an obvious example of something that's wrong. Um, but yeah, for artists, I think it's going to be so cool to see how people take advantage of this, right? And they're going to take advantage of it in ways that you and I could not possibly even think of at this point.
Yeah, I just sitting here thinking I can envision a rock band situation where I've got a bass player, a drummer, maybe I'm on violin, and then I've got an AI that is the fourth player in that band that can hear what the rest of us are doing and just starts putting in a keyboard part or a synth part or sound effect or whatever, that the computer is just making real-time decisions based on parameters that we've given it. And it becomes sort of the fourth or the fifth or sixth player in that ensemble, and rounds things out. And to me, that's a totally legitimate use of technology.
100%.
So I guess the question from people that I think is really scaring people is AI going to put people out of work? And what's your thoughts on that?
Short answer, no. I think everybody's work is going to be affected. If you feel like your work has not been affected, then uh, you're maybe a little bit behind, and you should do some more research. And maybe this is a great place to start and educate yourself. Um, Everybody's work has been affected. The rules have changed. The rules of building a business have changed. The rules of being an artist have changed. The rules of making money as an artist have changed, fundamentally, just forever. So all the things that you learned in the past are just throw it all out, basically, which is a great opportunity if you are a young musician or somebody that's got a lot of energy or a lot of creativity, or somebody thought, maybe things weren't set up so well for me as a musician. Maybe it's really hard to get gigs. Maybe it's really hard to make a living. Well, the rules have changed completely. So I think that's a really positive thing. And to the point of Trala TA, what we built, the AI thing we built that helps teachers save 3 or 4 hours a day, that's not putting anybody out of a job. That's giving teachers more time to actually teach, right? And you can actually make more money that way. So that's one of the promises of Trala for music teachers, is that you can make more money teaching on Trala than you would elsewhere, because elsewhere you have to commute, elsewhere you have to write all your lesson plans, elsewhere you have to do all your scheduling. Something we're building is, let's say you want to schedule a student for a lesson 7:30 p.m. your time next Wednesday or something like that. Instead of having to go in and log into a platform and find the scheduling and making sure all of that happens, you just type that into a prompt and it just happens. So we can take natural language and turn that into actual actions. And let's say you want to follow up with the student on their homework. You can just type that out, say, hey, follow up with the student on their homework. It just happens. So these are things where that's not taking you out of a job. That's just saving you a ton of time, and allows you to sort of like do more with less.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to maybe take stock of what are the things that I'm doing in a course of a day that are not things that I want to do, but they're things that I have to do. And how much of that can I offload onto a computer, so that I can spend the time doing the things that I actually want to do as an artist.
And such a cool thing right now is, like, nobody is an expert in AI right now. There are no experts. If you hear somebody and they say, oh, I'm an expert, right? I know everything about this. No, you don't. Nobody does. If you play around with this for a couple hours, you're going to find something that is maybe new, because the way this technology is built is that even the people that make it, they don't know what is happening inside, right? So they get surprised. And every time I use this technology, I get surprised as well. And it's sometimes like a very beautiful surprise. For example, you can, ChatGPT can write music. Like if you go to use it right now and you say, hey, write me a piece of music, it'll do it and you'd say, do it in tablature, or say, do it in a machine readable format, that you can then plug into Sibelius or MuseScore or something like that. It can do that already. So, and I will also say the people that are mainly using this and building this right now are not violinists. They're not musicians. So there's huge gains to be made from people that are musicians and artists that know something about the world that the people in Silicon Valley don't know, because they're thinking about some other stuff, right? They're not thinking about what it's like to be a violinist.
Yeah, that's. I was not aware that Chat GPT could just spit out some music XML or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It can write music XML.
Well, it's going to be doing some of that maybe next week for me. That's awesome. So we've talked about like what we think are some of the upsides of AI and how it's exciting for artists. Where do you think some of the dark side of this goes? What are we going to see? Because obviously social media has got both. Social media has been an amazing positive force in my life, but there's also kind of been some downsides. Where do you see sort of some of the pitfalls and how can we avoid those?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say let's start with the avoidance. I think for me, just building a company in 2023, building a company in the era of AI, the thing that I need to do to make sure that we can be successful long term and not be, completely destroyed by competitors is we need to be the first people to build things with AI because that means we're going to be making mistakes, we're going to be learning, we're going to be taking risks. And so everybody at Trala needs to at least know how to use AI. And a lot of our teachers are learning this as well. So this is just great professional development, right? I think the danger is if you don't educate yourself and there's this thing that's just running around, everybody else is talking about it, everybody else is using it, and you don't know about it, you don't use it. I think that's very dangerous if you want to be a successful artist, if you want to build a successful business. I think you need to know what's going on. So that's sort of the first thing for me. I mean, there's tons of downsides that we can talk about as well, but that's how I feel about it. And probably similar to maybe how you've approached social media. Like, there's downsides, but at least it benefits you to know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, with social media, I've made so many contacts that I wouldn't have had outside of social media. And then, you kind of, for me, you get pretty liberal with the block and delete functions. And we're going to try to keep this positive. And if things are happening there that's negative, like there are tools at your disposal that you can curate, your feed pretty successfully. My Facebook feed isn't full of a lot of nonsense. It's mostly music and it's, some people who I know in real life and I get to see what they had for dinner last night or whatever. So,
Yeah, it takes work to curate, but you got to put the
right.
work in.
Yeah, you do, but I think those tools are there. And like you said, that's already an AI. The AI has already figured out that I don't want to see that nonsense. So it's not feeding it to me. Um, a lot of people say, well, it's on Instagram, all you're seeing is pictures of these half naked women. And I'm like, I don't know if you know this, but it kind of pays attention to what you linger on. So you have created this world for yourself.
Yeah, it's a dark mirror. It shows you exactly who you are.
Yeah. Well, what's coming next for Trala and what's coming next, do you think, for AI and music? Can you look a year into the future?
I That is my job. Yeah, absolutely. I can look 5 years into the future. Let me do 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, if that's interesting.
Yeah.
I would say Okay, I would say 1 year for us personally. So we're going to be hiring about 100 music teachers, which has not been done before in the music education world. So a big thing for us is making sure we create contacts with musicians. We want to be the place that teachers want to go to. So we're building up professional development. So every teacher that comes into Trala actually gets trained on teaching. They become better at teaching, specifically online, teaching adults, teaching people with all sorts of different situations. Um, we also start to build up a library of pedagogy that has not been done before. So, I mean, we're teaching tens of thousands of lessons. A lot of pedagogy in the past was built off one person's experience or maybe a couple people's experience. But now we have the ability to look at 100 teachers' experiences or 1,000 teachers' experiences. And we have data to put behind that. So there has been no musical pedagogy that's been built alongside data. That's something we're doing for the very first time. One very clear example here is we have a student that is blind. And one of our teachers figured out how to sort of work with this student. His name is Garrett, and he's like a grandfather in rural Wyoming. And he's a great musician, an incredible musician, and super dedicated. So we figured out how to teach Garrett, and he figured it out with us, right? And then a couple weeks ago, we had a student come to us and they said, well, the problem is I'm blind, right? Like I'm legally blind. Is there any way that you could teach me? And we were able to say, yes, actually, you're not the first blind student we've worked with online. So this is totally possible. Now, normally, if you're a teacher, if somebody comes to you with a very unique situation, you're kind of on your own, right? Oh, I've got a student that's missing, maybe they're missing two fingers or something like that. And it's really difficult to figure out live what to do. But we actually have a library of accessibility and teachers that have worked with students that have missing fingers or that are blind or are neurodivergent or anything like that. And so you can imagine how powerful this can be at scale, and that we can actually share this with the community and push forward music teaching and music learning as a whole field. So that's sort of like 1 year, 2 years out for us. We will be expanding instruments, and the priority for us for expanding instruments is we want the experience to be better for everybody. So let's say we expand to, let's say we just went from violin to trumpet. Here's the reason we shouldn't do that. The reason we shouldn't do that is because there's not a lot of repertoire between the violin and the trumpet, right? So if we are a violin and trumpet platform, it's like, how do these two populations interact with one another? But if we did violin and piano, for example, I legitimately think we're going to be, and it'll be fun to maybe watch this back in 10 years. I'm not going to say 5 years, but like definitely 10 years. You will have a violin teacher that is entirely virtual, that if you put on some like augmented reality glasses or something like this, as a musician, you can sit down and they really want to learn, they really want to play. And how great is that going to be for art? If all these people can start learning. So yeah, that might trigger something, very quick process. So yeah, trala.com/careers is where that is.
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah,
you for letting me plug that.
yeah, of course. And if you are a student or you want to be a student or you know somebody who's trying to be a student, what's the easiest way to get connected with Trala?
Trala.com, baby.
Awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time.